It's 7 p.m. Your baby has been an absolute angel all day long. Calm during their morning feeding, peaceful during tummy time, even napped like a champion after lunch. You're feeling pretty good about this whole parenting thing, and then the sun starts to set. Within minutes, your content little human transforms into a screaming, red-faced creature who seems genuinely furious that you exist. Nothing works. Not the pacifier, not the bouncing, not the white noise machine that cost you $40. You check the diaper, clean. You offer food, rejected. You try everything you learned in those parenting classes, and your baby just screams harder. Welcome to the witching hour. And no, your house isn't haunted. What's happening inside your baby's nervous system right now is far stranger than anything supernatural. Here's what almost nobody tells you. This isn't random. Between 5 p.m. and 11 p.m., babies enter a window of peak fussiness that follows a pattern so predictable, researchers have mapped it down to the week. It starts around 2 weeks of age, builds to an absolute crescendo at 6 weeks, and typically fades by 3 to 4 months. During this period, babies cry an average of 2.2 hours per day, but some push well past that. Scientists call it the crying curve. Parents call it hell. But the timing reveals something critical. Your baby isn't crying because of something you did wrong in the evening. They're crying because of everything that happened since they woke up this morning. Think about your own nervous system for a second. You can handle a loud restaurant at lunch. You can deal with traffic on your commute. You can manage a difficult conversation with your boss. But by 9 p.m., if someone asks you one more question, you might lose it. That's accumulated stress. Your nervous system has a threshold, and by evening you've hit it. Now imagine you're a newborn. You can't filter anything. Every sound hits you at full volume. Every light source feels equally bright. Every texture is brand new information. Every face you see triggers a cascade of neural activity as your brain tries to process what it's looking at, categorize it, and decide if it's safe. Your nervous system doesn't have an off switch yet. It doesn't have a dimmer. It's just wide open, absorbing everything all day long. By evening, that system is fried. Researchers studying infant neurology have discovered something remarkable about what happens when babies get overtired. When an adult gets exhausted, melatonin rises and pulls you towards sleep. When a baby gets exhausted, especially in those first 12 weeks, something else happens. Their body dumps cortisol and adrenaline into their bloodstream, the same chemicals that trigger fight or flight in adults facing danger. Your overtired baby is physiologically stuck in panic mode, which makes falling asleep, the thing they desperately need, functionally impossible. They're trapped in a biochemical loop. The more exhausted they become, the more stress hormones flood their system. The more stress hormones, the harder it is to calm down. And the screaming you're hearing isn't anger. It's their nervous system short-circuiting in real time. This is why rocking harder doesn't work. Why turning on another light to check on them makes it worse. Why your own rising panic, completely understandable, makes your baby scream louder. They're not crying at you. They're crying because their internal biology has turned against them. Now add another layer. Your baby doesn't have a circadian rhythm yet. Adults have an internal clock that makes us tired when it gets dark. That system runs on melatonin, and it takes cues from light exposure, meal times, and activity patterns. Newborns don't develop this until somewhere between 2 and 4 months of age, and it's not fully functional until after their first birthday. What this means is genuinely wild. Your baby has no biological concept of day versus night. To their brain, 3 p.m. and 3 a.m. are functionally identical. The only reason they're losing it at 7 p.m. specifically isn't because evening is hard for them. It's because by 7 p.m. they've been awake and processing the world for hours, and their system is completely overwhelmed. But here's where it gets even more complex, because it's not just exhaustion, it's also what's happening in your home during those exact hours. You might think evening is quiet time, winding down, dimming the lights, getting ready for bed. To you, that's relaxing. To your 2-month-old, evening is the most chaotic part of the day. This is when your partner comes home from work, when older siblings get back from school, when you're cooking dinner, when the dog is barking, when everyone's moving around, talking, making noise. The activity level in most households spikes dramatically between 5 and 8 p.m., and your baby is taking all of that in, not as background noise, as foreground everything. Newborns don't have the ability to tune things out. There's no sensory filter. Adults walking through the room, the sound of running water, the smell of food cooking, the dog barking at the door, it all hits with equal intensity. Researchers call this overstimulation, but that term doesn't capture what's actually happening. It's more like sensory flooding. Your baby's brain is drowning in input. It can't process fast enough. Once that threshold is crossed, once the nervous system hits overload, babies don't gradually wind down. They spike hard. And once the meltdown starts, bringing them back is almost impossible because their stress response is now driving the bus. What makes this especially brutal for parents is that the crying often intensifies, right when you're trying to calm them. You pick them up, you're adding touch. You talk to them, you're adding sound. You walk to a different room, you're adding visual stimulation and movement. Every intervention, no matter how gentle, is more input to a system that's already maxed out. This paradox is why pediatricians tell you to try less, not more. Dim the lights. Stop talking. Put them down in their crib. Walk away for 2 minutes. Because sometimes the only way to help an overstimulated baby is to remove yourself from the equation entirely. But there's another factor almost no one discusses, and it happens inside your body, not theirs. If you're breastfeeding, your milk supply follows a hormonal rhythm controlled by prolactin. That hormone peaks in the early morning hours and drops significantly by late afternoon. Which means the milk your baby gets at 6 p.m. is lower in volume and flows more slowly than what they got at 6 a.m. Your baby is working harder for less milk right when they're already exhausted and frustrated. They latch, they pull off, they fuss, they latch again. The feeding that took 10 minutes this morning now takes 40, and half of that is spent crying. This isn't a supply problem, it's biology. But to a baby who doesn't understand time or patterns, it feels like something is wrong. And that frustration compounds everything else. Cluster feeding, the phenomenon where babies want to nurse constantly for hours, usually happens during this exact window. It's not because they're starving, it's because they're trying to increase your supply for the next day, while also soothing themselves through the only mechanism they have, sucking. But if you're already touched out, already exhausted, already holding a baby who won't stop crying, cluster feeding feels like punishment. Now let's talk about what happens when it's not just fussiness, when it crosses the line into something pediatricians have a specific term for. Colic, the rule of threes. If your baby cries for more than 3 hours a day, more than 3 days a week, for more than 3 weeks straight, that's the clinical threshold. Roughly 1 in 5 babies will meet that criteria. And here's what makes colic so psychologically brutal. There is no known cause. Researchers have tested everything: gut bacteria, formula intolerance, maternal diet, reflux, nervous system immaturity. Some of those factors correlate with colic, but none of them explain it fully, which means there's no reliable fix. You can try switching formulas, eliminating dairy, probiotics, gripe water, white noise machines, swaddling techniques, and some of those might help marginally. But most parents with colicky babies try everything and nothing works. The baby just screams. For months. Then, around 3 to 4 months, it stops. Completely. As suddenly as it started. The prevailing theory is that colic represents an extreme version of the same neurological immaturity, causing normal evening fussiness. The nervous system is developing, and in some babies, that process is just louder. But if you're in month 2 of 3-hour nightly screaming sessions, theory doesn't help. What does help is knowing that it ends, that it's not your fault, that your baby will not remember this, and that you're not failing just because you can't fix it. There's one more piece that explains why this is so hard on you specifically. Infant crying triggers a biological response in adult brains that's stronger than almost any other sound. Researchers have measured this using functional MRI scans. When adults hear a baby cry, the amygdala, the brain's alarm center, lights up instantly, faster than it responds to shouting, sirens, or even screams. This response is hardwired, evolutionary. It exists to make sure babies get attended to. But it also means that listening to your baby cry, especially when nothing you do stops it, activates your stress response continuously. Your cortisol rises, your heart rate increases. You enter a state of hypervigilance that makes it nearly impossible to think clearly or regulate your own emotions. And if you're already sleep deprived, already running on fumes, that system doesn't reset between episodes. You're operating in a state of chronic stress activation, which is why parents of newborns describe feeling like they're losing their minds, because neurologically you are. Your brain is being flooded with stress signals it cannot resolve. So what actually works? Not to stop the crying, because in many cases you can't, but to survive it without breaking. First, lower your expectations to the floor. Your house will be a mess. Dinner will be cereal. You will not be productive. That's not failure. That's appropriately calibrated priorities. Second, tag team if you possibly can. One person takes the baby for 30 minutes while the other leaves the room. Physically leaves. Because even hearing the crying from another room keeps your stress response active. Third, put the baby down in a safe space and walk away when you need to. A crying baby in a crib is safe. A baby being held by a parent on the edge of a breakdown is not. And fourth, if the crying is following the rule of 3s, tell your pediatrician. Not because they'll have a magic solution, but because ruling out medical causes matters. Reflux can be treated. Food intolerances can be managed. And if it is colic, at least you'll know. The witching hour starts around 2 weeks old, peaks at 6 weeks, and fades by 12 weeks in most babies. That's the timeline. If you're at week 4, you're halfway through the worst of it. If you're at week 10, you're almost out. And if your baby is 4 months old and still screaming every night, that's not the witching hour anymore. That's something else worth investigating. But for the vast majority of parents watching this, what you're experiencing is brutal, exhausting, and completely normal. Your baby's nervous system is still under construction. Their circadian rhythm doesn't exist yet. Their sensory filters are non-existent. And every evening, all of that crashes together into a meltdown that has nothing to do with your parenting and everything to do with being brand new to the world. You're not doing it wrong. You're doing it exactly right by showing up night after night, even when nothing works. That's what your baby needs. Not a solution. Just you, still there, still trying, still holding on until their brain catches up to the world they're trying to survive. The screaming will stop. Not because you found the right technique or bought the right product, because your baby's brain will finish building the systems it needs to handle the world. Somewhere between week 10 and week 14, you'll have an evening where the meltdown doesn't come. Then 2 evenings, then most of them. And one day you'll realize you can actually eat dinner without holding a screaming infant, and you won't even remember exactly when that became possible. Until then, the only thing you need to know is this. When your baby loses it at 7 p.m., when nothing you do makes any difference, when you're sitting on the floor at 9:30 wondering if this will ever end, you are not watching your child reject you. You are watching a nervous system learn how to exist. Every night they scream, their brain is building the architecture that will eventually let them calm down on their own. The crying is not the problem. It's the process. And the fact that you're still here, still trying, still showing up, even when it feels pointless, that's not nothing. That's everything. Your baby won't remember these nights, but their developing brain is recording something more important than memory. The fact that when they fell apart, someone stayed.